Is this Indiana? Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So I think that means,
We've got, and we've got a webinar on Wednesday regarding that. There's a webinar tomorrow regarding HR issues.
I just wanted to bring that to your
Okay.
attention.
No.
I don't know that,
No, we're not, but,
this is all obviously.
yeah.
But I wanted to let you know there's a statute that describes disasters giving the governor or the chief executive of a subdivision the authority to do that.
Right. Yeah, and that's duly noted. All right, I think we're ready to get started. We'll call the council meeting to order, and we'll start with the invocation by Councilor Quantz.
As we begin this evening, we are grateful for our community and all those who are thoughtfully and intentionally working together to limit the exposure and spread of the coronavirus in our community. We remember those employers who have to make difficult decisions for their employees and customers, the first responders and medical personnel in our community who are striving to meet the needs of those under their care while maintaining their own health and that of their staff. The families scrambling to care for children and vulnerable members while worried about where the money will come from. The faith-based and mental health organizations tasked with encouraging people to continue on paths of recovery and health. Help us as leaders to be proactive and not just reactive, to set an example of kindness and caring in all our deliberations and our interactions, and to remember that ours is a community that has always valued human life and rallied time and again in the cause of helping our neighbors in need through difficult times. We ask for your guidance, your wisdom, your strength, and your heart. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks, Diane. Thanks, Jennifer. So, everybody take a deep breath. Certainly been an unprecedented last 10 days, and we will try and create a little semblance of normalcy with meeting tonight, although you might notice our seating is a little bit different. We've chosen to socially distance ourselves from each other, which is not a bad thing tonight. Before we get into it, I suppose let's look at the approval of the minutes from the March 2nd meeting. Those have been presented. Were there any, Jerry, did you find what you wanted in there about, okay, very good. Any other questions or concerns, or additions or corrections to the minutes from the March 2nd meeting? Motion made by Jerry Fresh. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Cindy. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. And again, I'd like to recognize our visitors. I'm thankful there aren't a lot. And I'm sure as we go along, that will be something we will be looking at. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Lynn, we've got some reports, oral and written communications, the fund report from February. Anything you want to talk about there?
I didn't see anything that was noticeable or outstanding.
Okay. All right, so I think this is a good time. I passed out a copy of the restrictions that we're going to place on the city departments and the rest of the buildings here. I sent this out to the council, or excuse me, to the department heads about an hour ago. Last week we sat down for a couple hours and talked about the different concerns, the different issues that this very rapidly changing issue, this COVID virus spread, how it's impacting departments, how it's impacting our city. I'm sure you, like all of us, have been inundated with information. I know I've been involved in discussions with our school superintendents. The White House had a call last week. Been delving into the state. I know we've all heard and all pretty much know what the seriousness of this thing and what we need to do. Tonight I want to just address some preliminary restrictions that we're placing on city business. And I want to remind you that, you know, it seems like this situation changes hourly. And as things continue to occur, we may need to adjust these provisions. Scott Royst, our city attorney, has found some Indiana code that discusses national security emergency and disaster emergency and some of the opportunities we may have to work some of these restrictions as they relate to this code, which is good. Tomorrow we'll be on a webinar with AIM talking about the human resource opportunities, difficulties, challenges, and possible solutions as we work through all this. I know today the federal government is working to try and create, again, some provisions that will soften the blow for a lot of our workers and families, and we certainly will not make any firm decisions till we have all the information. So I know Jennifer is looking hard at our human resource component of this, and again, what we may and may not be allowed to do if the emergency declaration gives us a little bit of extra privilege, if you will, to try and, again, take care of our employees. But please keep in mind that, you know, what we talk about tonight, what we go through here tonight, you know, these are first blush. These are things that many communities are doing. The AIM membership, we sent out a letter. I sent out a letter to all the AIM, to the mayors, and got a lot of responses today about what other cities and communities are doing. And I don't think any of this falls particularly outside the limits of what's being done around the state. So what I've also decided to do was to do this for 6 weeks and reevaluate. I think that makes the most sense. I feel like this probably is going to continue for some time, but I think this will give us a chance to enact these things for a reasonable period and sit down and reevaluate them at the end of the period and make changes or continue them, whatever the situation is. So all of these will be effective on March 18th, which is Wednesday, through April 29th. Starting them Wednesday will give us a little bit of a chance to create signage and send out information on social media of these policies and give folks a chance to become familiar with them before we actually enact them on Wednesday. And then for 6 weeks through April 29th, Wednesday, April 29th, that'll be the first period that we're going to enact these restrictions. Again, at that time, we'll reevaluate based on recommendations from public health officials. That's, I think, what we've all learned through this crisis is that aside from the politics and this crazy thing, the most important thing is public health, epidemiology, and the science of pandemic and spreads in this particular disease. So we have found locally, and I mentioned this, my State of the City, I'll mention again tonight, the Kosciuszko County Health Department, their nurse, their Dr. Remington, Bob Weaver, they've just done a marvelous job of trying to separate fact from fiction and help guide us in a lot of our decision making. And I'm very proud that we've had their resources to help us through this, because it's not been easy. So item number 1, all city buildings will be closed to the public. Number 2, city employees will continue to observe good hygiene and social isolation or separation as they continue to conduct city business. Unless they can't meet by phone or virtual methods, essential meetings may be conducted with less than 10 individuals if necessary. Non-essential meetings may be conducted only by phone or virtual methods. Sewer bills can be mailed, paid online, or put in a drop box in front of City Hall on Buffalo Street. And Lynn, do you have any, why don't you just go through those ways that our residents can pay their sewer bill without actually coming into City Hall?
Well, you're correct, Mayor. They can be mailed, they can be paid online. There's a fee with credit card that the credit card company charges, not the city. And we have the drop box out here in front. You can also drop off your payment at Mutual Bank as long as it's the correct amount and not, you don't need change or whatever. And also you can sign up for auto pay on our website where the money's automatically taken from your account that you've set up to have it taken.
And you did mention if someone is sending their payment in the mail that you don't want.
Do not pay in cash. If you're sending it in the mail, don't pay cash through the mail. The drop box is there for that.
And I think we've estimated, Lynn, in it right about 10% of our bills are paid in person at City Hall. So we think the majority of our payments are being done through the mail online with the drop slot. But hopefully, you know, that won't create too much of a disservice to our residents. We've also issued a ban on non-essential travel. Again, for the first 6 weeks of our employees. I'm asking departments, and again, this whole thing's evolving, and best practices in certain disciplines and certain departments, public safety, street, fire, parks, all of them, have their peer groups that are looking at different challenges that they are going to have and have developed some emergency procedures. And I'm meeting with the departments a little bit later this week, and we're going to talk about specific emergency procedures in the provision of services to our community to protect our citizens and our employees. That will be coming about probably later this week. I've talked to the Parks Department and told them we'll be canceling all park and recreational activities. We'll be canceling all space rentals at all facilities. Kind of moving up to building and plan. We're looking at that building permits can be applied for online. And if residents have building and plan questions, we'd like them to use the internet or the telephone to request that information. Again, with this building being closed, I know that's a fair amount of the traffic that comes into our building. And again, we're going to try for 6 weeks and see how this works out. Again, human resources, you know, what we're facing could be unprecedented as far as employees needing time off, with the schools being out, with families not having the child care that they need. You know, we know there's going to be challenges, and we want to respond to that with our employees. Those policies, again, are being developed. We don't have the answers now, but we know that there's a webinar tomorrow put on by AIM that we're going to address a lot of these things. You know, every community in Indiana is having these same discussions and quandaries, and I think we're going to get some good ideas tomorrow. Jennifer's also been in contact with our employment attorney. And Jennifer, any comments, anything you want to talk about now? I know we're still in the process.
Other than the information that I gave you about it past the House, that they're going to be doing an emergency FMLA amendment to specifically address items that you were talking about. It's going to address pay, especially for public sector trusts. It's going to talk about foundation for us to build off of too. We're not gonna be reinventing the wheel, which is gonna be great, because then everybody's gonna say, well, like Joe was talking about, Lisa, probably talk about that tomorrow too.
So again, the policymakers understand the critical nature of this, and we believe that a lot of our direction will come from them,
Right.
again, rather than us trying to reinvent the wheel.
Correct.
So we'll be closely watching that. I will mention that, Lynn, we got a letter from, was it State Board of Accounts earlier in the week, and they basically said if you're audited next year, don't use the COVID virus as an excuse. So they're marking their territory, and I suppose at least we got the warning. There's obviously very little flexibility in the State Board of Accounts. However, I know other agencies, and I'm not throwing stones at them, I'm just saying they mark their turf right away, and that's why we have to be careful with what we do as far as enacting new policies or emergency policies to make sure that those policies will stand up in an audit or anything else. Let's see. So as far as our public meeting schedule, we're going to be looking at that. We're going to probably limit the majority of our regularly scheduled public meetings and limit it to just those that are time sensitive or have essential agenda requirements. So there's probably a good chance a lot of the meetings will be postponed or canceled. But I know most specifically the Board of Works, there's often time-sensitive requirements as far as paying bills and interest payments and contracts that have certain dates that we're probably not going to be able to skip. So, but we're going to talk a little bit more about as the state considers how we will be able to handle public meetings during this emergency. So we're not going to comment too specifically on that other than we will have regularly scheduled public meetings, but primarily those meetings that are necessary for time sensitivity or essential items that have to be discussed and acted upon. So more for that to follow. Warsaw Police Department, they have a public area for folks coming and going, or coming in for complaints or to get reports, get background checks, i.e. And we've got a small vestibule that's got an intercom, and we're going to not allow anyone into the building. Again, all public buildings will be closed to the public. They will be able to stand in that vestibule and make a request for whatever it is they need. And our employees will be there to help them, but they will not be allowed into the building. Oakwood Cemetery, again, will take requests via phone and electronic means. All street department requests need to be made by phone. I know our emergency responders, again, they're in the same process of going through their procedures and policies to ensure safety to our employees, protection to our employees, and try and minimize the spread of the virus for all. I did want to say that, again, all city buildings will be closed to the public, and this includes City Hall, all street department buildings, the airport terminal building, Oakwood Cemetery, all 3 Warsaw Wayne Township Fire Territory stations, all Warsaw Police Department buildings, all wastewater utility buildings, and all Warsaw Parks facilities. With the exception of the campground, I did talk to Larry today, and they feel that those that have regular plots and bring in their fifth wheels and their big trailers, those are independent, isolated living areas, and he felt like that was okay, and he's been checking around to see what other communities are doing. I also wanted to bring up that several communities we checked with today are going to keep their public restroom facilities, their washroom facilities open. So at this point, we're planning on when we normally open our facilities, probably later in April and May, those public washrooms will be available. Lynn, you had something you wanted to say about toilet paper and baby wipes and...
Well, I just wanted to mention that most baby wipes are not flushable, and it says, even though it says on the package, it still gets in our system and clogs everything up. So the only thing that should really be going down the toilet is toilet paper. No napkins, no Kleenexes, no baby wipes. Just to save our system. And same with people on septic tanks, they shouldn't be flushing
Right.
that kind of stuff.
And again, these are all things that, there's so many details and issues floating around, and I know that is certainly a concern. Our guys are gonna be busy enough, I'm sure, so thank you for that suggestion. You know, again, though, I just wanna reiterate that our city employees will continue to work in our facilities for the time being, and conduct city business basically by phone or electronic means. Let's see. I mentioned the Warsaw Airport Terminal building will be closed to all but passengers and crews of incoming and outgoing flights. And kind of in summary, again, we're meeting with the department heads this week. They'll have a chance to have digested these. We may have some tweaks to these. We're going to see how this works out. But as I've mentioned to many people, I think we're in a pretty tight situation as far as needing to take the bull by the horns. I think we've got an opportunity with this pandemic being relatively new in our country that we do have a chance to get ahead of it, but we can't hesitate. And I think this is the reaction that I've heard across the state from all the cities and towns, the mayors that I've been in touch with. They're very supportive of what the governor talked about today. His leadership is, again, being felt at the local level, and the important thing is that we all do our part, everyone do what's been asked, so as not to create a situation where you're kind of undoing what others are trying so hard and sacrificing to do. Again, we'll evaluate these emergency policies and adjust them on an ongoing basis as needed. This is new territory. Nothing is set in stone. This is our first pass at this, and again, I'm sure there'll be some adjustments here, but for the time being, those are what's set in stone for the next 6 weeks, or at least how we're going to start. The only other thing I would say, if per, again, Kosciuszko County Health Department or any of our other public health officials determine that we now have an issue with community spread in our community, we will reevaluate these measures immediately, and I'm sure there will be more severe measures just depending on where we go. But for the time being, I feel comfortable with this. I know this first council members have seen this. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about these procedures and policies, and be happy to consider additions or changes, or as we, again, go through this with our department heads. And if not tonight, if you contact me over the next few days, I would appreciate any input you all have as we move ahead. So, any questions? Okay. I would also suggest that if you get on the AIM website, Matt's keeping a pretty good list of what other communities are doing, and I think it might help put what we're doing into perspective. I think Matt has said the majority of communities are closing their city buildings to public, and that seems to be kind of where I've landed. So after talking to our department heads, I know Jack did represent the council at that meeting, and I know we've talked a bit about it as well. So this is certainly an all hands on deck. Again, we'll be utilizing the services of our city attorney and HR to keep us guiding as opportunities arise to tweak this, hopefully to the benefit of all of us. Mike?
Mayor, do you have any information that you might be able to pass on to small business owners? I know some of the large corporations have put travel restrictions, and as a small business owner myself, I'm talking to my sister today, do we stay open, do we close? We're not really sure.
Right.
We're not that busy. I think people are really starting to hunker down and just looking for a little guidance.
Yeah. And you made a good point, a lot of the larger corporations are making the calls, the school corporations are making calls, municipalities, counties, state, everybody's kind of talking about they're taking, the responsibility and creating these restrictions. Obviously, there's lots of restrictions going on with sporting events and travel, and small business is another one that I think, the important thing that I've learned from our department heads is, number one, you want to protect your employees, and you want to protect those folks coming into your business. Those are really the big issues at this point. But the restaurants and bars are closed down, I think it starts tomorrow in the state. And that's going to be a very difficult situation. Evidently, those that can provide carry-out and curbside service still can operate, but I think businesses will probably have to look at how they staff. They'll probably have to look at maybe staggering staff members, maybe cutting back schedules. I think the demand for services and goods will probably dictate how small businesses react and what types of measures they institute. I do know one of the benefits that the federal government's talking about is eliminating payroll taxes, federal payroll taxes for both employers and employees to soften that blow. And I know there's other things, other incentives that are being considered. So certainly taking advantage of that is probably the most important thing you can do. That's a good question.
I think something that I'm aware of that's kind of underway through the chamber and maybe some of the other small businesses is to encourage people, if you need to get a gift for someone and you can't get out to buy that gift, call one of the small businesses, have them send a gift card or a gift certificate, something like that, something to help them out to keep a few dollars going. And I know in talking to some of the downtown restaurants, they are going to provide curbside or delivery services. So I think, and I've even seen some of the retail boutiques that are willing to do the same. So hopefully we can help support the businesses a little bit.
So your support will be appreciated, and it may be in a very different way that you've received services in the past, but so.
If you guys need to talk, could you at least step up to the microphone, or I think there's a floating microphone going around,
Yeah.
please?
They've asked me not to pass it. I do have sanitizer, but oh, you can go.
All right.
Yeah, so.
Anybody else? I mean, this is all good. We need to talk about this, and
I do think, though, that the people listening online are not going to be able to hear unless you go to a microphone. So we need to be cognizant of that.
yeah. Okay.
You could walk around with the microphone this time.
I might be able to make a 6-foot reach. I don't know, I might have to pass it off to Jeff.
Does anybody else have any comments? Again, this is evolving. I think, again, I applaud the governor's leadership today as these measures become more difficult and drastic. He's certainly relying on us locals to institute these changes. I know the schools, I heard this morning that Warsaw schools are still providing breakfast and lunch meals to the kids for pickup. They're doing curb service as well out the high school. I've also heard that the buses, and I heard this, South Bend's doing the same thing. They've got portable Wi-Fi units, and they're going into neighborhoods that are underserved as far as Wi-Fi, so that the kids can facilitate their e-learning. So, you know, I think we're very fortunate with technology. I think it's helped us get ahead of this thing. I think it's also helping us solve our problems with GoToMeeting and the e-learning that the schools are able to provide. I got a call just before I came in that Fat and Skinny Tire has been canceled for the year. So I told Nick, the bike committee, I wasn't surprised. It's too bad. But I didn't expect that would go on. So again, there's a lot of travel restrictions and again, these are crazy times that, you know, city's here to not only provide for our welfare of our workers, but more importantly, our citizens, and to work as a community to work through the hardships that we're all going to face, in some way more than others. So, good suggestions by all of you to continue to try and support our locals, check in on your neighbor, but don't get too close, right? And wash your hands. Okay, I think that's probably enough of that. So let's move on to a little bit of business. Get back to board pack here. We'll start with Jeremy. You've got an abatement request. Item number 1 under new business. This is 802 Center LP Senior Housing.
Yes, we are basically requesting that you review an amendment to the existing tax abatement that was already approved based on the fact that they have not started construction. The original abatement would be behind a couple of years, so the county had requested that we update this abatement so that it'll be in line with the start of the construction. So it's already been approved once, but they're just requesting an update to that time frame. So it will start construction this year and be completed in July of 2021.
So a little bit of housekeeping to keep up with their timeline.
Yeah, in this schedule, I didn't attach the schedule, but the schedule would be the same as it was previously approved.
Other questions?
I move to approve the amended tax abatement.
Motion made by Councilman Gross to approve the tax abatement. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Cindy Dobbins. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, item number 2 is also a CF1 from West Hill Development. Jeremy?
So yeah, there's a few CF1s here. All of them are from West Hill, but they are for different projects. So you have the first two on your memo are from Patrick Industries, which occupied the first shell building. The second one, or the third one, is the Banner Medical building. And then the third one is also the Patrick Industries, which occupies another building within or it's the expansion, sorry. So the first one referenced the first shell building to 60,000 square feet. The second one is the personal property and the expansion of the facility, an additional 64,000 square feet. And then the last one is the new shell building. So you have basically 3 Patrick Industry tax abatements, 2 of them concerning real estate that is owned by West Hill Development. The third one is personal property, which would be Patrick Industries tax abatement. And then you have the Banner Medical tax abatement for real property and the tax abatement for the new shell building. And these are all CF1s. So they're just already approved tax abatements, submitting their compliance forms for pay 2021, so it'd be pay next year.
So West Hill, the shell building, that's the only one that is a new one, correct? Or is it
It is
actually?
the first year.
First year.
The actual abatement was approved in the previous year. This is
Okay.
the first year it'd be applicable. It's not complete yet, but there will probably be a partial assessment, so I did inform them that they probably need to submit it because there was a building there as
Gotcha.
an assessment for this year.
Okay.
So, Jeremy, excuse me, but I have the personal property one I have is for Patrick Industries. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's two real properties, which is West Hill Development, the original shell building and then the expansion of that shell building. And then Patrick Industries has a personal property tax abatement that was granted.
Gotcha. Questions?
Hearing none, I would make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilor Clondaris.
I'd second it.
Second by Jack Wilhite. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously.
And that was for the Patrick Industries one as well too, correct, Mike?
Well,
It was for all of them that were listed in item.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, item number 3 is ordinance 2020-0304. This would be amendment to the general police and fire salary ordinances. This is an example of a tool that we may need during this upcoming difficult times. What it does is it allows for an employee to be paid by working at home. This is not, I repeat, this is not a blanket for everyone to be able to work at home. All this gives us the ability to legally pay someone for working at home if they are chosen or request and have the ability to work at home. At this point, we have no employees that are working at home, nor at this point do we plan on any employees working at home. However, certainly circumstances could change, and we are not allowed to pay for someone to work at home without an amendment to the salary ordinance per state statute. Jennifer and Scott, you want to talk about that? Anything I've left out in that?
I'm sorry, Judge, Mayor. Well, the one concern on this ordinance is we currently have it as emergency stay-home pay may not exceed
2 weeks,
2 weeks.
yeah.
I don't know if you might consider expanding that by approval of the council, because my concern would be we may need to have a council meeting then every 2 weeks in an emergency situation to give that approval. So
Right.
I might suggest that the council approve something longer than 2 weeks or 10 days. I know I wrote the thing, but it seems a little short-sighted now considering how long the CDC may recommend different things that I think maybe that would be something you may look into, is changing paragraph D of this.
Well, I think that's a great example of how things have been changing, and this is a good time to have that discussion and figure out. Jennifer, you have some thoughts on that?
Right, so again, I think this is a great idea for if and when we need it. I am anxiously awaiting, because of what the House has put through and what they have already passed in conjunction with the emergency FMLA, where unless they don't tweak it, because we can't guarantee it, that employers are going to have to pay employees at least 2/3 of their wage. That's after a 2-week period, like a 2-week waiting period. So if this 2 weeks covers 2 weeks, then we are still going to be paying the employees, and those conditions are less restrictive than these under that potential new emergency FMLA law that's going to be hopefully passed. Does that make sense a little bit? So yes, it's great that we're going to pay employees 2 weeks with having to get into their sick banks, without having to deplete their personal time, with their vacation time and everything. That's a great start, but just, so when you say extend it maybe to 3 weeks, we may not have to do that, because there's going to be other laws, hopefully, that are going to go in to help us out from that point forward.
But and again, this is a great conversation.
Right.
If we if we actually have an employee that can do their work at home, and I think there are a limited number of employees that can actually do that have access to what they
Right.
need
Very
and can
limited.
actually do it at home. Without any regard to FMLA, I mean, they're just continuing their work. It may not have anything to do with FMLA. Doesn't this give them the opportunity to do that and not worry about those other issues? And I know this is all evolving, so
Right.
it's worthy of discussion.
Right. This is great for hourly employees. You're right, it's gonna be very, very limited number of hourly employees that would have a need to work at home.
I know we were tossing, a couple of us, maybe the idea of like going with 30 days, because we would probably need to have a council meeting at least every 30 days, no matter what, just to conduct business. So that might be one idea, is to, and then, because it gives you the power as the mayor, to make these decisions, and then that would, broaden your power without having to convene us in order to make something like that happen.
Jennifer, do you feel like it would be prudent to hold off on this until we see what the federal government's going to do in the state?
I do. I truly do. I think this is a great idea, but this may be in complete conflict with what may be moving through in the next 24 to 48 hours. So we would be passing something that would maybe not be necessary, other than we definitely, well, I hope that you would definitely want to allow employees to be covered under that first 2 weeks of no pay status under the emergency declaration.
So you're suggesting if we pass it to leave it at 2 weeks for the time being? Or are you suggesting that we not do anything tonight?
Are you going to do 2 readings?
Have to suspend
Well, that
rules or
would
discuss.
depend on what the council wants to
Okay.
do. I mean, tonight, we're operating under standard rules and procedures and,
So I guess my question would be is that if we went ahead and passed this, we may have one employee that would fall under this ordinance, and then in 2 days, if something else gets passed at the Senate letter, or even with President Trump signing an executive order, does that mean that we're gonna have, 10 people over here that's gonna be this? I'm just trying to, I guess, make it easier for myself too. Which policy am I gonna apply to which employee according to what circumstance?
but isn't the intent of this that if an employee is working at home, this avoids ghost employment, and this
Yes,
allows us to
absolutely.
pay them?
Absolutely,
And,
yes.
and as far as getting involved in FMLA and sick time and
Yeah.
comp time and all that,
Yep, you
that's
absolutely-
really separate from this.
Yes.
I think this still is gonna be required if anybody's gonna wanna try and do work at home. And the example we've been given is potentially employees whose children are now off school, and do have the ability to work at home, for an extended period of time.
Right,
And there are provisions in here, I think, that they can be called back.
they're on
Yeah.
call, they have to report within 2 hours.
So
Back to the
there is a
department.
little flexibility.
So here's my thoughts. My thoughts is, the intention of this is to avoid ghost employment. There's, I handed out, in an emergency, there can be rules suspended as it relates to political subdivisions, giving the chief executive, the mayor, the ability to otherwise not have to follow the normal rules for some of these issues. I think the intent of this ordinance really, and what the ask of the council is, to try to give the mayor some discretion as we go forward to pick and choose if employees, and it, like you said earlier, it's changing hourly almost. If there's a need for health issues for you to require employees to stay home, that can be the mayor's choice. And if there's other superseding laws that come about federally or state, then good for that. But I think tonight as we sit, I think the best plan would be to try to have some flexibility for you as the mayor to be able to make these decisions if it's a declared emergency, which obviously it has been. And I'd ask the council to give you that flexibility by passing this ordinance so that if needed, you can use it as you see fit. And if there's other superseding laws that come around out that are good for the employees of the city, so be it. That's great.
What time frame were you thinking would be appropriate?
I'm concerned now after these timeframes, they seem to be getting extended, you know. First I thought it was a couple-week thing, and now it could be longer, and who knows. But I don't like the idea on here of it saying 2 weeks, because in a normal circumstance, you all just meet every 2 weeks anyhow. I think a 30-day period is more appropriate. That would encompass, in any 30 days, depending on the date you'd have to do it, I think we could meet, even if we were in an emergency session, to give more direction to the mayor. If we're only operating under this ordinance, and it sounds like there's a really good chance that we may be operating as far as employee laws under different state and federal guidelines eventually anyhow, but as we sit here tonight, there's uncertainty about how that's all going to shake out. I'd ask that you give the mayor the flexibility to do what he thinks best as far as stay-home employees
What are,
for a 30-day period.
right, what are your thoughts of then bumping that to 6 weeks so that we are in complete unison with 6 weeks of limited access into City Hall, 6 weeks of open doors of, you know,
Well,
trying
what
to-
I think is great about this ordinance, it just says it may not exceed whatever date you guys say, however much time, without approval of the majority of the council. So I guess I would ask, I think it'd be better to err on a longer time frame, because if the mayor doesn't think it's necessary, and if he's not instructed by healthcare professionals that a long time frame's necessary, then obviously he's going to be fiscally responsible for our city and try to get people back to work as soon as it's safe to do so. And maybe things will change and people aren't ever sent home. I guess we'll see, but,
So does this ordinance go away at the end of the 2 weeks or whatever time period we put in?
well, I would
Is that what
say
you're saying?
that he's not allowed to pay people for more than 6 weeks without getting stay-home pay, without getting additional approval from you all.
And it has to be, I think, in the period of a declared emergency too,
It has to be during a period.
which
of
we
declared
haven't
emergency.
done yet.
Mhm.
And if we do that, I want to research that and look at what time frame. I mean, I know the president's done it, the governor did it after our first case in Indiana. And it was for obvious reasons to trigger these types of issues. So
right.
I think that's what we would probably do here locally, is to be able to, and I'm sure a lot of what's going to happen at the federal and state level is going to require that we be under, and it may just be under the state of an emergency declared by the governor. I don't know if it necessarily has to be within the community, but
Mayor,
this specific ordinance talks about it during a declared emergency, and that the mayor specifically declares the emergency.
And I would say too, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the 2020 salary ordinance, so it
right.
would end at the end of this year. We would have to revisit.
Right, so normally, all of our leave policies are in our personnel policy handbook. And that can't be changed without an amendment or circumstances where the Board of Works has to really quick make a decision. That there is wording in there where that is allowed. By him doing amendment to our salary ordinance, you are 100% correct. It's gonna go away anyway.
end of
But
the
if
year.
you do put some type of time frame in there, you're not gonna be able to go past that time frame anyway. So I'm just trying to make it easy for myself. So if we're gonna do 6 weeks of maybe some
Why don't we
alternate
make
work.
it 60 days?
Okay,
I would ask that you guys make the time frame 60 days. I think that may cover what we currently think the CDC, it's a long-range outlook at the current time of the 8 possible weeks of no assemblies, more than 50 people. What the most recent information, it sounds like, is out there.
I
So
think
it would
they
be
dropped it
8
to 10.
weeks and 60 days?
Do I?
Just 60 days.
Just
I think
60 days,
60.
no weeks involved.
Right, 60 days from the adoption.
60 business days?
60 days.
calendar days.
60 calendar days.
Okay.
Right?
So I would ask that the ordinance that was presented to you, that we mark out in paragraph D, that the emergency stay-home pay may not exceed 60 days without the approval of a majority of the common council, and otherwise pass it as it was presented to you on your board packets.
Do you need a motion for an amendment? Or just
Yes.
a motion for
We need a
60
motion to
days?
amend
I
the,
would make the motion
Do we-
for the amendment
well,
to change.
Do we need a motion for this first?
motion and
don't
second,
we?
then we'll discuss it. As
We-
far as the
we need a
amendment.
Motion for this and a second and then an amendment, don't we? Isn't that the, and then an amendment to it?
So this was what was put on the notice of your board pack. So I'd say you have a motion to pass this ordinance and then a motion to amend it to change the 2 weeks to 60 days.
Or
Okay.
can we just
Yeah.
make a motion to pass it with the amendment included in the motion? I believe you can do that.
I'm fine with that.
So I would move that we pass ordinance 2020-0304 with the amendment in section D, that it read may not exceed 60 calendar days without approval of the majority of the common council.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Right now, further discussion. How do you feel about, Josh, you got any thoughts?
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea to extend the timeline, just in case there's a lot of uncertainty. So the longer we can make that timeline to aid the employees, I think is better. So, yeah, I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
Right.
Anybody else? Jerry?
People will this actually affect?
Well, I'll let Jennifer answer that. I don't think
Right,
very
we-
many.
Right, well, we
Well-
currently have roughly 204 full-time employees right now. Right. So how many people can actually work from home?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, individuals who primarily work outdoors and don't have duties that involve a computer or answering the phone and things like that, it probably is not going to apply to them because they can't work from home doing that. We're talking maybe if we have somebody from the building and planning department, I'm just using this as an example, just an example. Let's just say, for some reason, we get a department who can work from home administratively, because they're on a computer, they're answering their phones, they can do a lot of that work, and somebody in the office is exposed, and all of a sudden we have a whole department that's quarantined. Well, how about if we allowed those employees that can administratively still perform functions for the city to be able to work from home while they're quarantined? That's who that would apply to.
Yeah, well, I was wondering just how many are you talking about?
It could be 15, it could be 20. That I can't, it could be 25, but it's basically it's probably the admin staff.
Yeah,
I
think the kind of the limiting factor is that some of the information that's available to our employees doesn't go outside this building. They're on,
Right.
in Lynn's department, for example, it's on a wired network, and they can't get that financial information at home. So, that would eliminate that. I'm thinking it's primarily administrative people, and as Jennifer mentioned, if there happened to be a quarantine situation in a department, I know that we do have some technology options as far as being able to access information at home, actually answering the phone from the home. So, there are things that we have not done in the past that we don't, under normal circumstances, would never do. This just gives us that opportunity to do it. But I like you, don't think there's going to be, that was my first question, and as I thought about it, I can't believe that it's going to be a big number. But I think Jennifer makes a great point. In a quarantine situation, it might really help save our bacon if there's a situation where people have to be at home. So I don't know. Again, this is uncharted territory. I can't answer it. I don't think anybody can. I just think this gives us a tool to be able to do that.
You know, in many ways, government struggles to keep up with the corporate world when it comes to these sort of things. And there's large numbers of people within our corporations which do regularly work from home. Now, I can appreciate the government is a little different, and some of the history that has followed some ghost practices in the past we don't want to get into. But I think this is a plus. I really do. And there are ways to work off of the network with that sensitive material without it ever actually leaving the site. I think this is a plus, and I think it is something that, well, I'll support.
Anybody else? All right, there's a motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
Now,
Do
is
you-
this of
Mr.
an
Mayor?
emergency nature that we need to?
I was just going to ask, if, given the fact that it's a unanimous vote, do you wish to suspend the rules and consider it on second reading tonight?
Mr. Mayor, as you know, I typically am not in favor of doing something like that because of, you know, we've got rules in place for a reason. However, if there ever was an emergency, I think this is one of those that I would support, and I would move that we suspend the rules.
Motion made by Jack Wilhite. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I tried to get it. He raised his hand first. Mike Glonderis will second that.
Sorry, Mike, couldn't see you.
Well, he's got disadvantage. We got a councilman all the way in the back of the room. That's not fair. So, all right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Again, passes unanimously on second reading.
No, wait,
Oh,
now we
have
need to
that
pass
was
the
just to
ordinance. That was
suspend
just to amend the
Well, that was
rules.
to suspend the rules. You're right. Okay, who wants to make the motion now?
I'll make a motion that we suspend, or we've already done that, pass on second reading ordinance 2303.
Four.
2020-0304. All right, motion been made. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Finch. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. The ordinance passes unanimously on second reading. Thank you very
Good
much.
Lord.
All right, finally, ordinance 2020-0305. This is the ordinance that will create the procedures for accessing the independent legal counsel for our, for the Common Council. I know our attorney has worked hard on this with the council. I think you've all had a chance to take a look at this. I think this lays out pretty much what was agreed upon in past discussions. Are there any questions with regards to this ordinance? And remember, this ordinance allows for this to happen and sets the procedures, but the actual contracting with a specific attorney would be a contract that would go through the Board of Works that would follow ordinance 2020-0305. So that being said, Counselor, do you have any discussion or thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts, first of all, is there's been a lot of work. The original action team of Councilman Shoemaker, Councilman Glonderis, and Councilman Quantz, they spent a lot of time last year, and then Jack replaced Councilman Shoemaker on working with this, and I think there's been a lot of thought go into this. They work very hard. It's as we talked many times in the past, it's breaking new ground for a Tier 3 city if they choose to hire someone at some point. But I think this is a very good start on the procedures that should be used to ensure that if an attorney is employed, it's employed for the legislative body as a whole by a majority vote, and I think that's what the statute contemplates.
The previous resolution that was passed, I assume this supersedes it as an ordinance?
It does.
Okay. All right. Comments?
Mayor, I want to thank the committee for working on this. I will admit that I've been one of the members of this board that has had all kinds of questions and concerns. I will say when I read it this afternoon, I think it did come in this afternoon, and I do believe we're looking at it on first reading, that I was a lot more comfortable with this, and I do appreciate the efforts of the committee. I would like to challenge the board to consider sections B, F, and G, where it discusses the council taking action with a simple majority vote. Maybe it's the government teacher in me, but at all levels of government, historically, there have been times where legislative bodies will ask for, on paper, before reality, if it ever were to happen, that a supermajority be required. And supermajorities oftentimes will help fight against the political issues, realities, sometimes negative polarization that can occur not only in a community, since we're looking at a local legislative body, but as well as on the council. And a supermajority of 5 out of 7 might be more attractive to this group. I don't know. In order to take any kind of action, it would require the individual that has concerns and wants legal counsel, as well as others of the board, to really be able to convince a supermajority that an attorney is needed. A 4-3 vote might be, again, maybe, could be potentially divisive. But if I were, for example, the one, it was 6-1 in favor of an attorney, regardless of my feelings, I would feel like the council has spoken very clearly. I am the one. Or it could be another member with me. It's just the two of us. The fight for the attorney is over. We now need to fight for good, sound policy. And it makes this not be the political issue if it were to become political. And I think, I just would like this board to consider section B, F, and G, making it a supermajority, just to talk about it. I wanted to entertain it. And again, let me conclude. Thank you again for everybody's efforts to get this on the table. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Comments?
Jeff talked to me about this a little bit earlier, and I haven't been able to run all the scenarios through my head that I need to go that far. I wonder, we're looking at a council right now that is basically all one party, and I wonder how that would affect things if it was a 3-4 with 2 different parties. What that would look like and what the downsides and upsides would be of that.
Related to that, I would hope that the selection of a council would not be as political as the issues, questions surrounding why we think we need an attorney or why we would want one. That's again why I'm suggesting that this board consider a supermajority to take action for the attorney. Then everything else is going to be majority vote. Again, my opinion. Thank you.
This is the first time I've heard Jeff's argument being raised. It does raise an interesting question. My first thought, though, is we don't have to have a supermajority vote to do anything else in this council. What makes this different? And we worked long and hard on this. Drafts went out. This has been in the docket for, when did you send that out? 10 days ago? Email? So it's been out there. And this is the first time I've heard this argument.
This particular, the document did not get in the hands of everybody until today, due to some
Okay.
glitches along the way.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have to have a supermajority for any other type of vote?
Not that I'm aware of.
I can't off the top of my head.
Override a veto, that'd be the only thing I can think of, yeah.
Which we've never done.
Does this require 2 votes?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I would tend to concur with Mike on that, although I respect your opinion about it, Jeff. But I know for myself, I feel comfortable with a regular majority. Not sure how the others feel.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to hear from others.
I'll chime in, since I didn't really get a chance to talk about this as in-depth previously. So, first off, commendable work. Thank you so much, everybody, for the hard work you put into it, Scott and Diane, Jack, and Councilman Shoemaker as well. I think that Scott used a word that is the whole reason why I would be in support of approving this, is the word if. I think, for me, I've always kind of viewed it as an insurance policy. So hopefully there's no need to ever use the services of an outside attorney. However, if we need to, I think it would be great to have that security blanket. As far as the supermajority is concerned, if there were other situations where a supermajority was the precedent and the standard, then I would probably be a little more for that. I think that making an exception here probably isn't necessary, and a simple majority vote would, be the normal process. So, those are my thoughts.
My only thought, and again, I just heard about it half an hour before the meeting, is that if we did need to employ an attorney, it might be an emergency situation. And we would have to, make sure we got enough people here to vote. And that might not always be possible, just depending on the situation. So that might be one instance where it wouldn't be the best, but that's the only thing. I haven't had time to really think about what it would mean, but that came to my mind when I was thinking about it on the way over here, because I was thinking about emergency situations, that it might be an emergency and we might only have 5 or 6 people here even.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one as yet, and that would be, because that is part of that has been one of the things that we've been most concerned about, is if we had to react quickly, how do you do it?
Well, again, since this would take 2 readings, one of the options would be is to pass it as is tonight, and then take more time to consider it, and if we felt like it needed amended, do that on the second vote. That would be correct, right?
Correct, it's an ordinance, so it needs 2 readings.
So if we amend it on the second vote, then we got to take a third, right, with the amendment?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Anyone else?
You got any thoughts, Jerry?
Majority is good for me. I don't see where you have to have a super anything. Majority vote.
All right. Any further discussion?
Given what I've heard, I'd like to make a motion to pass the ordinance as it is written.
I'll second.
2020-0301, motion made by
We can
Councilman
wait for our next meeting.
Londaris.
Everybody can think about it.
Second by Councilor Quantz.
We can sleep on it. We can discuss amongst ourselves if we need to.
Any further discussion?
I appreciate everybody's patience again, and that's exactly what I wanted, is for us to at least think about it. And so as a result, on this first reading, I very likely will not support it, just to keep everybody honest. But back to the efforts here, great appreciation for all of the hard work to get us at this point. Very positive, so thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, passed 6-1. All right, we'll hear it on second reading at the next meeting. All right. Any other matters come before the council?
The next meeting's going to be on March, or April 5th? What, April 1st? I'm not fooling. Not on my calendar. It's like the first.
April 6th.
Is that the first Thursday in May?
April 6th. Yep.
No, it's currently scheduled for April the 2nd.
April 2nd.
April 2nd.
Council meeting?
Yes, because of spring break, I
You
believe.
changed it at the
Okay.
beginning of the year.
It's a
Yes, we did.
Thursday.
All right, it's on here. All right. Well, stay tuned.
I was just gonna say, Mayor, I know my spring break plans have changed. The schools are not going to be in session. I just throw that out in case we want to go back to our regularly scheduled meeting. I'm gonna be here. I don't know if anybody else is or not.
I think that's discussion that you all can have, if you want to have that right now, move to the 6th.
I would be here at the regular scheduled meeting, but not the changed meeting.
So you'll be here for the 6th if,
Correct. If we went to the back to the regular schedule. But I won't be here on the 2nd.
right. Anybody else? Anybody else not available on the 6th?
I potentially could not be available.
All right. I don't really like fiddling with it. I think we've made that. I think we should leave it as is. But unless you all have a different thought, obviously it's not going to please everybody. So let's just leave it as is for the time being. As I'd mentioned, public meetings will continue in a similar arrangement that we've set up tonight. But again, we'll have more to come on scheduling our regularly scheduled public meetings. So, Chad, it's good to see you here. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
I'd like to take this moment just to thank the mayor for all the hard work that he's put in this last couple of weeks with this, the issues that are going on.
Thanks, Jack.
I want you to know that we're here to support our people. We're here to support the city and trying to help you move things forward. And if you need anything, please call on us.
I appreciate that. Again, this week will probably be pretty telling as far as the reaction to what the governor did today and the options that we might be afforded in this time of an emergency. So certainly we will need all hands on deck, and we'll just take it a day at a time, an hour at a time. The way I've never seen anything like it. I don't know if anybody here has, but who would have thought 2 weeks ago we'd be in this position?
I found it interesting during the department head meeting how you said, I think it was, you made a statement and said that is as of now at 11:13. Of course, that'll probably change at 1:15. And at 1:15, I think the governor or the superintendent called.
Something had changed.
Imagine.
And it changed at 1:15. So
I want to read something I got last night. This was from Kip Tom. Kip's the UN ambassador. He's in Rome right now, and he sent me a text or an email last night. Kip said, Joe, as a civic leader, take COVID-19 threat seriously. We have been on lockdown for a week, and numbers of infected and death losses are climbing. The city of Rome's streets are empty, the sidewalks bare of civilians, stores, restaurant, many small businesses closed. Be bold and deal with this early and aggressively. You are not immune. And that kind of summed up, I think, the way a lot of us feel, that we can't hesitate. And certainly our action tonight has hopefully started that. I know a lot of what we talked about tonight, the reactions to this virus, the measures we're gonna take as a city, it's not gonna be, people aren't gonna like it. And it's gonna be difficult for everybody. But I think we're following what we need to do as a state, unified amongst all locales, and hopefully we'll come out of it a little bit better for that. So, but thank you, Jack.
Joe, I want to personally thank you to your leadership and then leading by example, coming in here tonight. The little things that we can do during this very difficult time of questioning seriousness. Leaders, I think it's important, lead by example. And just walking in here tonight and seeing this, I think that message is a positive thing for our community. 6 hours ago, I heard the president say, public meetings of 10 or more, be very careful and also keep your distance. Might have been the governor that said that. Something to do. And we're doing that 6 hours later as we represent and serve this community. So I appreciate the example that you've shown all of us in here tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And Cindy, again, I appreciate your comments to support our businesses and keep an eye on those that may be susceptible and help those in need. This is certainly a time, talked a little bit about this at State of the City, and when I wrote it, had no thought that those principles would be applying to a situation like this. So that's why we're all here, and that's why this is a great community. So
I think it's important for the community to know that, I know I will, and I'm sure the rest of my council members, we will step up to the plate as we need to help with anything. I know I work with Senior Services and also Salvation Army, and I know both of those organizations are really well positioned right now to help out with the elderly or anyone that needs assistance.
anybody else? All right.
The only thing I would say is, since you're home, fill out your census form.
You know, I got a bulletin today from them. They're throwing it into a tizzy because these college kids are now leaving schools and they were supposed to be. So they're revising their procedures. I hope it doesn't impact the census, but yeah, amidst all this, we've got a census. All right. Well, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, thanks. You got anything to sign, Lynn? All right, hang on. All you road council members out in the gallery, don't leave. We've got something to sign. And we'll rotate this. Judge. That's funny. Yes. Yeah.
When you were talking about paying,
Matt Greller is the executive director of AIM.